Hello, Professor Toybox here along with Mater, and I'm back in my Radiator Springs Raceway toy box today to finish up the build exercise. Last time, we'll come in here to Spark mode. Last time we finished up the cliffs here, or I blocked in the cliffs anyway, along the Cadillac Range, and I don't know why I kept calling it in that video the Cadillac Ridge, but this is really the Cadillac Range. But anyway, last time I blocked in these cliffs, but I missed a few details. So I want to go back and add those in now, and then we'll move on with the rest of the build. So the first thing I missed was actually the bridge. So we're going to begin with this little terrain cube, and I'm going to stick this up here right next to that section of cliff. And we'll come into Spark mode, open up the styling menu, and we're going to set the style on this to be the sights of San Francisco. And I'll set that to be my theme for right now because I'm going to use this for several blocks. And I'm just waiting for that to actually style. There we go. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and move this piece over here. And we're going to put another one down on this end, and I'm going to rotate this. I think I kind of like that. That one. And then we'll put a couple of these long, tiny, and thin terrain blocks under here. And we only really need to do it from this side. We don't have to fill the whole area under there, because this is the only side the player is really going to see. But that adds some substance to the bridge, which I think looks really good. All right. Next thing we'll do, we have the this flat area over here by the tunnel. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to style this first to get back to our Carburetor County theme. And I'll set that to be the theme. And I gotta wait for that to actually update. There it goes. Alright, so I'll pick that up to get back to that part of the drawer and then set it down. And get to my screenshot here. Okay, so we're going to put a second one of these down centered on here like that. And then we'll scroll over to the right and pick up these curves, and we'll put one down on either side. That just looks a little bit more natural and adds a little bit of substance to that, which I think looks better. Okay, and then the last thing that I missed was this gap over here underneath the road. That's kind of a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this piece of terrain up and put it down, which gets us back to that part of the drawer. And I don't think I need a terrain piece that big. Just something that will fill that space under there like that. So now we don't have a gap there. So that's good. Okay, so with that, we're pretty much done with that area. So now we can move on to some of the other key locations in Radiator Springs, and we're going to start with the radiator cap out here. And you'll find the radiator cap up under the set pieces drawer. So let's go up there first, because I want to show you something. So here's the radiator cap, and the RS needs to be facing towards town. So if we set this out here like this, for example, I'll set it on right on that terrain block. You'll notice it fills the terrain block that it's sitting on. So we put that down. And then we come down over here into town. And we look at it from this direction. that radiator cap doesn't stick up very far. And in the movie, it sticks up a lot higher than that. And you can barely see it. So I'm going to go ahead and raise that up by putting some terrain underneath of it. And I think that'll make it a much more prominent location because we should be able to see that RS from in town. So we're going to go ahead and pick this piece up, and I'm just going to drop it down up here for right now. And we'll scroll back down to the terrain drawer. And we're going to use this large flat terrain block. And I'm going to set this right down here below it. And you'll notice it's sitting right on top of that other block that's there. Now, as an alternative to that, you could put this down, or if you're on a system with a little bit less memory, you could actually pick this piece up and raise it up a little bit, and that would be perfectly fine, and actually that's probably not a bad idea. Let's go ahead and raise this up, and that'll save us a little bit of memory. And then because we don't have a square cliff around it in the actual movie, let's go ahead and soften that with some of these slopes. So we're going to use these large corner hills. I'm going to place one out here on this corner, like that. We're going to put one on each of the four corners, and then we'll put some slopes in between. So like that. And like that. And then our large slope. Like that, and all the way around. You get the idea. I want it to look more like a hill than anything else. Here we go. Okay. And now, if we go ahead and bring this down and set it right on top of that. From town, that looks a lot better. It's much more prominent. And that sticks up the way it does in the movie. So I like that. Okay, so that's the radiator cap. Next up is Willy's Butte, which is over here, which is the dirt track that Doc and Lightning McQueen raced on. And for this, let's go ahead and, just to save a little bit of time scrolling, I'm going to come over here and pick up one of these pieces and put it down, which gets us back to that part of the drawer, and then we'll head over here to this end of the track, and I'm going to begin with the curve, the canyon wall as it goes around the curve. And for that we need the large canyon curve piece here. We're going to line it up with the edge of the terrain on this side. And I'm going to go about a half a block back from that terrain seam. So actually right there is perfect. And we'll put another one over here, like that. We'll put this little curve on here to kind of soften that edge. And then on the other side, put one of these here, put one of those there, and then a couple of these long walls to kind of cover up that ugliness. And that's going to hang off the edge a little bit, but player's not likely to notice that. Okay, so from ground level, that looks solid. We don't have to fill in all of the gaps up here behind it. So there is the canyon around the dirt track. And then we need Willy's Butte, and you'll find that again under the set pieces drawer. That's right next to the radiator cap. So just like that, and in the movie it's oriented this way. And we're going to line this up with the center of that seam, both for the terrain and the road there. And we'll back this up. Let's see, how far back do we want to go with this? We're actually going to go back about like that. Okay, and there's Willy's Butte. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and go offline and place the plants and vegetation around the toy box and a few smaller rock formations. You don't need to watch me place all of these because that would be boring. So I'm going to do that offline, and then I'll be back in a few minutes and show you the end result. All right, I'm back, and I'll slowly fly over the course and show you what I've done. If you're building this course for yourself, you can pause the video along the way to recreate it. And you'll notice I've placed a number of trees around town, and I'll show you where you find these. So most of the trees are, pick that up and move it, are the Radiator Springs tree from the plants drawer. And once again, you have to have the car's playset in order to access this. And I've placed a bunch of these around. The exact placement doesn't really matter, but I've placed a few of them there, and you'll notice I've rotated them so they're not quite so repetitive. So each one is rotated a little differently. I put a few here around the cozy cone, as well as this customizable plant, which we'll get to in a minute. I've also placed a number of cactuses out here. Not too many, but I'll pick that one up. That's also from the plants drawer. It's the Radiator Springs cactus, and it's just a few down from the tree. And I've placed several of those. And I've mixed it up a little bit. I've also got a couple other little cactuses from the plants drawer. And it doesn't really matter which ones you use. You can choose whichever ones you want to use. I placed a couple of trees over here. One behind Luigi's and the other behind the curio place. And then on this side of town, let's see, we'll do this way first. Sorry for all the camera spinning, but I put a few behind Flo's. I put a few over here around Fillmore's. And a few over here behind the body shop, those two. All right, I've also placed a number of these pieces, and I'll pick that up for you. That is the step cliff from the terrain drawer, and if you don't have that, you may have to purchase some of the terrain pieces from the toy store. But I'll put that back down, and that just kind of, as you're coming out of town, blocks your view a little bit of the rest of the track, so you're focused on this area. Some players might be tempted to try to cut across there and cheat, which the game probably will not let them do, and this will just kind of discourage that. But anyway, that one's placed here, as you see, about 3 blocks or so off of this terrain seam. And then I've got one of these customizable plants here, followed by this one, and another piece of terrain behind that with a customizable plant next to that. And you'll notice how those are aligned. The front edge is not lined up. The tree is back a little bit. And then there's a little bit of overlap here with another one of these pieces of terrain behind it. And we'll go ahead and just follow the course around as you would expect here. A couple of little cactuses here. The placement, again, doesn't really matter. It's just something to break up all of the dirt and rock. And as we come around the corner, I've got some trees over here. I would have liked to have carried these a little further down the road, but I'm trying to save terrain. And again, the placement of these doesn't really matter. You just want something in there to guide the player around the track and also to kind of break up all of the rock that's back there. Plus there's a lot of trees in this section of the track, the road in the Cars movie. So let me give a little bit more of a bird's eye view here of the tree placements. And again, the exact placement doesn't really matter. Over here, we have a few as you're coming up the top of the slope. And then I've lined the road with a bunch of these. You don't need to put any in the middle because the player will likely never see those as they're coming around the track and always facing this direction. So it makes it look like that whole area is full of trees, and it doesn't need to be. I've got two of these over here, these customizable pieces. And then another Radiator Springs tree. As we come up here, I've got a customizable piece here, along with a little tree, and I'll show you this one. Pick that up. That is a Toy Story bush, actually. This is from the Toy Story in Space playset from 1.0. If you don't have that playset, any of these Colby things from the Lone Ranger or Radiator Springs cactuses will work just fine. And then I've got another one of these customizable pieces placed out here like that. And I've got 4 of these along the road here, alongside that cliff. The first one, you can kind of see where this is lined up with the cliff face there behind it. Again, I've got 4 of them. And a couple little cactuses. For the bridge, I've got a bunch of trees down below, and that just kind of hides the fact that there's no water there. But being the fact that there would be water there, you'd expect to see some trees. A few more of these little Toy Story bushes around the perimeter of that hole. And another customizable tree here. And a couple of them here along the road, placed like that. Another customizable piece up here on that corner. One over here, I put that on top of the seam. Another Radiator Springs tree there, just for a little bit of greenery. 2 more customizable pieces over here on the edge, and that's to kind of cover up that flat edge there of the block that's sticking up. And another piece of terrain over here, up against the side of that, which just kind of makes that not look quite so flat and not so stark an edge. And a tree there. You come down the slope, and then here where there's a zigzag, I've got 2 more of these pieces back to back. Little cactus here and some trees around the barn. And then I put a few of these terrain pieces out here in kind of a O shape, and that just kind of keeps the player from seeing where the track goes, again, so they're not tempted to try to cut across there, because the game will not allow that. If you come off this track even a little bit over here around this turn, it's going to snap you back onto the track somewhere. So these pieces here, this one is lined up. The left edge of this is lined up with the center of Willy's Butte, and then it's sticking back about 2 blocks or so to the right of that. And then the corner here is butted up to that. These 2 are next to each other. There's a little bit of overlap here with that one. A little bit of overlap with this one. Again, the exact placement of that doesn't really matter. Okay, so that's everything I've placed. Oh, and then some little tires here going into maters. And these are out of the racetrack pieces drawer. I just kind of thought that was a nice little touch. Alright, so for the customizable pieces, most of them are going to be the Cars theme. So we're going to come into the styling menu for this. And we're going to customize the majority of these to be Radiator Springs. And I'm going to theme all. And it'll say, are you sure? I'll say yes. And now it's going to go theme them all. But this one in particular, I am not going to use for that theme. So we're actually going to use the Colby theme. There's nothing wrong with that if you want to use that and you don't have the Colby terrain strip, but I do, so I'm going to use that. I'll apply that. I just think that looks a little bit nicer, a little bit different. Alright, once again we'll follow the terrain around, and you'll notice these pieces over here have been customized, so now you have some railings and the little Route 6 sign, and I think that just looks really good. As you come up over here around this corner, of course you got all those plants, and over here these become railings, which fits the theme very well. This one becomes another Radiator Springs tree, and I use that because this one won't actually sit in there without sitting partly on the road. So this tucks back in there nicely. Another corner piece there with a railing. And now here you end up with 4 of the same piece. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and tweak these. So I'm going to change the first one to be Colby and the third one to be Colby. That'll kind of break that up a little bit. And the Colby desert from the Lone Ranger fits this theme, so that looks just fine like that. Alright, and then these over here, this one becomes another one of those trees. And we got some railings along here, is what those end up becoming. The 2 over here end up becoming railings, which looks really good. And I think that's it for the customizable pieces. Yeah. Everything else looks really good. And with that, the build exercise for this toy box is done. Next time, I'll add the logic for the track features and obstacles, and I'll put the finishing touches on this course. As always, I invite you to subscribe to my channel or follow me on my blog if you enjoy Disney Infinity and you like my videos. That way you won't miss a single episode or a project of mine. I hope you have a great day. Take care.